A Florida tenant is accused of raiding his landlord's bank account in order to buy a Lamborghini. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News.
This is Yaroslan Bartutis posing in front of luxury cars. But according to Doral police, he was making some of those car payments on another man's dime.
Couldn't explain why he had charged an excess of $77,000. Couldn't provide the means of payment for a Lamborghini, for thousands of dollars in credit card payments.
The victim in this case is Bartutis' former landlord who lives in Venezuela. Valentino Soli tells NBC6 Bartutis would pay the rent via bank transfer every month, so he had his account number and routing number. Police say with this information, Bartutis paid his own credit card bills and also made a few car payments, totaling more than $77,000. You're better off saving your money under a mattress instead of the bank, says Soli. He's upset the bank did not have more layers of security.
All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Florida, and it's about one of those tenants who just is a scam artist and trying to take advantage of the landlord. And this is kind of an interesting situation because I had heard about the conditions that created this, and I've heard about, landlords using this sort of method in order to take payment from tenants. So in this situation, basically the landlord was charging the tenant rent and gave the tenant his bank account information so that the tenant would be able to deposit money directly into the landlord's bank account, right? This is kind of a way that some small mom and pop landlords accept payment from tenants without having to take cash, okay? They give the tenant their bank account information, then the tenant is able to go down to the bank and make deposits into that account. Now, unfortunately, by giving the tenant your bank account information, you are leaving yourself susceptible to fraud, okay? And that's exactly what happened to this landlord in this situation. At least that's what I'm getting from reading this article. So, this is kind of a warning to the landlords who are using this method in order to collect the rent. This is not the most safe or secure method, and you could become a victim. Now, it was exacerbated by the fact that this landlord is actually, living outside of the country at the time and was not monitoring the bank account. So, obviously, if you are accepting rental payment by this method, keep a good eye on your bank accounts to make sure that, hey, there's no kind of fraudulent activity taking place. But this landlord wasn't doing that, and this tenant, they jumped in there, they took advantage, and apparently wanted to buy a Lamborghini with the landlord's money. So yeah, this is nightmare situation, easily avoidable though if you use different methods in order to collect the rent. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So as a small mom and pop landlord, if you're on here, have you ever done this in order to collect rent from tenants? Have you ever, given them a bank account information and then allowed them to go down to the bank and make deposits into your account? Now, I never have done this, okay? I would rather not have a tenant knowing my bank account information, but I do know landlords, in particular small mom and pop landlords, usually with just like one house, okay, who do this because they don't want to collect cash or they don't accept checks from tenants because, the checks bounce. Okay, so they'd much rather the tenant go down to the bank and make this deposit. And like I said, this is not a safe or secure method. There is better ways to collect the rent, from your tenant. And there's payment processors. Yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but you're going to have that peace of mind, and you can charge that money back to the tenant for the cost of using those payment processors. So anyway, let me get into the article. I don't know if I described this in a clear enough manner so that you can understand exactly what's happening, but anyway, let's get into it. This article is coming from NBCMiami.com, and it says, man accused of stealing $77,000 from former landlord in another case of elderly exploitation. And I don't know so much about the elderly exploitation part, but I do know that, this could happen to any landlord who uses this method of, rent collection. So anyway, let's get into the article. According to the state attorney, Catherine Fernandez Rundle, elderly exploitation has increased in Miami-Dade County. Just this week, 2 men have been arrested for fraud against elderly victims. Yaroslan Bartudis is accused of using his former landlord's bank account to make credit card payments and luxury car payments. He couldn't explain why he had charged in excess of $77,000. He couldn't provide the means of payment for a Lamborghini for thousands of dollars in credit card payments, said Doral Police Chief Edwin Lopez. So yeah, sounds like he charged up his credit card and then was using the money from the landlord's account in order to pay the credit card off, and was, making payments on his Lamborghini using money from his landlord's account. That's what this sounds like, and the bad part is that the landlord was not monitoring the account, right? So that might be what we're going into when it comes to the elderly abuse part of the whole story, where you have a person who is older, who might not understand or be capable of making sure that, hey, all these transactions aren't stuff that I am paying for. Okay, now it could be a case of laziness where they're going after the tenant using this because that is just an additional charge they can press against this tenant. And meanwhile, the tenant, isn't actually a vulnerable elderly person. I don't know. I don't know what the specifics are, but I do know that that's what this tenant is being charged with in this case. The victim, Valentino Zali, lives in Venezuela and had a realtor managing his property. He told NBC6 Bartudis would pay the rent via bank transfer every month. Therefore, he had his account number and routing number. So he was managing this property through a realtor, right? Now, the way I see it is, right now, I have owned rentals out of state before, right? And this is kind of a similar situation where you have a property manager who is supposed to be, putting all your money into an account and then paying you, just basically giving you the owner draw of the proceeds at the end of the month, right? And that should go directly into your bank account, right? So the tenant should never have access to your account if you're doing things correctly with your property manager. So really, my thing is, I'd be blaming the realtor for this, because the realtor was not doing their job correctly if they were having the tenant pay directly into your bank account. Okay, so the realtor was not doing their job as a property manager correctly, in my opinion. If the setup was where the tenant is, the tenant has your bank account information, I'd go after that realtor and be like, hey, you know what? You are a crap property manager, and you should not have had this set up in this manner. Okay, because that left it very susceptible to being abused, and that is exactly what happened. Police say with this information, Bartudis paid his own credit card bills and also made a few car payments. Zali said he realized all these transactions occurred about 9 months later when he was working on his accounting for the year. You're better off saving your money under a mattress instead of the bank, Zali said. Not true at all, but you didn't do your accounting for 9 months, and then you look back and you're like, where did this $77,000 go? Excuse me, but I mean, I'm imagining this person is relatively wealthy, and if you'd have to be if you own property in the Miami area, yet you're living in Venezuela, and and you didn't notice $77,000 missing. You'd have to be relatively wealthy, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't still bother you to get used and abused by your tenant, but you didn't have the right people watching after your money. You should have had a proper property management company managing the place instead of a realtor who was giving your bank account information away to your tenants. Give me a break, okay? So, I mean, you're not without fault in this whole situation, but the tenant is the primary person to blame, okay? you were taken advantage of. There are ways to make sure that this doesn't happen again. First of all, fire the realtor who was doing the property management on your property, okay? They screwed you over by giving the tenant your bank account information. They don't deserve a second chance, period. There's 1,000 good property management companies in a city as big as Miami that will, basically do things in the proper manner where, you get the money and the tenant never has access to your bank account information. That's the first thing I would do. Of course, make sure that we prosecute this guy to the fullest extent of the law. Make sure that's done as well. And, I'll put this video out there as a warning to those people who do business in this manner. Like I said, I have heard of other small, usually just the small landlords who are doing, collecting their rents in this manner. And this could be a warning that, hey, this is a bad idea. Don't do business like this. Okay. There are other methods of collecting rent. If you need to have your tenant get money order or a cashier's check because you don't take personal checks, that might be a better method. They actually have payment methods like I think Zelle or there are other money processors out there where you can collect rent from your tenants so that you don't have to literally be collecting cash or paper checks, okay? So anyway, interesting article. I'll put a link to this article in the description down below.